It's college football season, which means you need the unbeatable coverage of Sling TV starting at $35 a month. Sling has all the big games on all the biggest channels like ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, SEC Network, ACC Network, Fox, and the Big Ten Network, all for the best price. You can stream to any device. You can record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space. You can pause or change your service at any time. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the live TV you love at a price you'll love. Try it today. Welcome to the Andy Staples Show, presented by Sling. Our long nightmare is almost over. It's Friday, and on Saturday at noon, Austin Peay and Western Kentucky will kick it off. You thought I was going to say Nebraska and Northwestern. Well, they will 30 minutes later. Chris Vannini from The Athletic joining me. Week 0 is here, Chris. How are you going to celebrate the return of football?
I'm going to celebrate by hanging out with your co-host, who's not here today, Ari Wasserman. I'll be at the Chateau Wasserman to enjoy everything that's going on at Week 0, just as we did a year ago, and you were there last year.
I'm so sad that I'm going to not be there. I'm going to have to zoom in. Like, you just have me in a corner on a screen somewhere.
Yeah, we'll get some honorary Heim barbecue like we did last year, and repeat everything. Hopefully Nebraska doesn't have a repeat performance of last year, though.
Yes, I think that's the scariest part for Nebraska fans, is that they do not want to. If anybody's going to have to watch this happen, they don't want everybody to be watching like they were with the Illinois game last year. And we were just hammering the panic button after that game. Yes. I can't even imagine. I'm trying to imagine what those fans will be like because I think there's extra psychological damage if it's Northwestern, because that's the one Big Ten team they beat last year. Yes. I feel like that will send them over the edge.
Yes. And based on Nebraska's schedule, you're going to have to get all those wins you can before November. So Northwestern in Week 0 is one of those ones you got to have. And if you don't have it, there's going to be a panic button, and I think for good reason at that point.
Yeah, it is. The talk radio situation in Nebraska, which always lively and competitive, will be off the charts if they don't win this game. If they do win this game, there still will be questions, but I think it'll probably calm it down. Later in the show, by the way, we're going to have Mitch Sherman, our Nebraska beat writer, and our What to Watch For segment. And of course, What to Watch For, presented by Sling, is Nebraska Northwestern on Fox. But we got a few other games. But before we talk about them, I want to talk about a story that you and Matt Fortuna teamed up on in The Athletic. You created these college football coaching tiers. And basically, Nick Saban is in a tier all by himself, if you heard the discussion on the show the other night, as he should be. And then you rank everybody else. And this was fascinating to me. I like the tier below Saban. I thought the criteria were great, because it's basically the coaches who've taken teams to the playoff or to a national title, and Kyle Whittingham, who has led a team to an undefeated season, has been consistently good, took a team from the Group of 5 to the Power 5, and actually won that Power 5 league's title. So that's a heck of a group. I think I know where you got the most pushback, though. So you go to tier 2, and you got a lot of pretty proven coaches, your Mike Leaches, your Lane Kiffins, your Dana Holgersons, Mike Gundy's, James Franklin's. You go to tier 3. And in tier 3, you're listed alphabetically. So the third guy on the list, Dave Aranda from Baylor, head coach of the defending Big 12 champs. How much venom came from Waco for putting Dave Aranda in tier 3 and not tier 2?
Yeah, that was the biggest pushback. Dave Aranda and Mel Tucker both being tier 3 instead of tier 2. Ultimately, and this is not meant to be predictive. I think Dave Aranda is going to do a great job at Baylor and has. Mel Tucker is obviously going to do a great job at Michigan State. This is meant to be a ranking based on the full body of work. And we wanted to not have recency bias for one, but also take into account the entire body of work. And longevity is the difference. Dave Aranda and Mel Tucker have had one very good season. They also have had one or two not good seasons.
Right.
Baylor was terrible. Baylor was terrible in 2020. So was Michigan State.
Yeah, Michigan State lost to Rutgers in 2020.
Michigan State lost to Rutgers in 2020. So they're on their way. And so somebody we quoted in the story was like, look, if you're talking upside, I'd put Mel Tucker in 1B. Like you get that. But we
so
wanted
you'd
to
put it that, and that's the Dabo Lincoln Riley group.
Yeah. So like it's that this isn't meant to be like predictive of where we think they're going to be. It's going to be based on just what they've done right now. And if you look at tier 2, all the coaches in there have been at their schools or have been a head coach for a long time. You know, David Shaw, Mark Stoops, Mike Gundy, PJ Fleck, Matt
Kirk
Hamill,
Ferentz.
Kirk Ferentz. Like these are guys who have done it for a long period of time, which is very, very hard to do. Not to say that the other guys can't, but that's where we got the most pushback. And I understand why, but I do think that Matt and I were consistent with what we put a premium on throughout these rankings. And I can stand by that.
So this just popped into my head because I'm trying to figure out how quickly these things can change. Like you mentioned, Aranda and Tucker clearly have huge upside. There's a chance they're viewed 2-3 years from now in a much different light. But if they have bad years, they also could be viewed in a much different light. Where would Dan Mullen have ranked this time last year? Tier 2, probably, right?
I got to pull up his record. I mean, he did make the SEC championship game multiple times.
He had double-digit wins at Florida the first 2 seasons there.
Yeah, he would be okay. I'm looking at this
and then obviously overachieved at Mississippi State.
Yeah, tier 2 without a doubt. And yeah, he went to a Peach Bowl, an Orange Bowl, and a Cotton Bowl at Florida. Like that's not playoff, but that's very good. And obviously 69-46 at Mississippi State is very good. I think he would certainly be tier 2. But the fact that he got fired while being in tier 2 is a testament to what that job is and what the expectations are. Not every job is created equal.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me because I'm going down tier 2 and I'm like, there's no chance anybody here, no matter how bad their season is getting canned. Like nothing's going to happen to Paul Christ at Wisconsin. You know, nothing's going to happen to Kirk Ferentz. Nothing's going to happen to Lane Kiffin. Nothing's going to happen to Pat Narduzzi. Like these are all people who've been successful, and even if they have a little bit of a down year, they're going to get a little grace in that. But it is interesting because that, and I think you mentioned that in your description of Tier 1B. Tier 1B is the folks just below Saban, which is Ryan Day, Luke Fickell, Jimbo Fisher, Jim Harbaugh, Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley, Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, Kyle Whittingham. For the most part, those are the programs that expect huge things. And if you don't deliver them, you're in trouble. Utah and Cincinnati are kind of the outliers there. But, I mean, LSU is a great example. Brian Kelly sitting there. He's there because the guy who won the national title 3 seasons ago is not there anymore.
Yep. I think that is every coach. I think that's every coach who has made the playoff is in 1A or 1B.
Who's still working. Wow.
Yeah, who's still working. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
and
that's the bar. That's the bar. And obviously, we also got a lot of pushback on, hey, why is Jim Harbaugh in the same level of Kirby Smart and Dabo? Like, yes, at the top of Tier 1B are those 2 guys. Dabo's won multiple national championships. Kirby just did. But we did it in 5.5, but 5 tiers, because that's what the Athletic did with NFL quarterback tiers, with NBA player tiers. So we tried to be consistent and did it to 5. You could stretch it out to 7. You could stretch out to whatever, but we tried to keep it within a clean number and then just kind of an exception for Nick Saban.
I like the tiers better than just straight up rankings because, and you have to do this you've done this with where you rank the FBS teams 1 through 130. It's very hard once you get past about 15 to see the differences between a lot of these things. And so this feels better where you can find kind of those bright line spots to draw a line and say, this situation is very different from this situation. But, you know, it feels to me, Chris, and this is something that you get very busy on once the coaching carousel kicks into high gear, where when a job opens up, you're always explaining what the pluses and minuses of the job are and who fits in what role. But I feel like I don't have a huge list this year beyond, say, Scott Frost and a few other people of obvious hot seat people. It doesn't feel like there's obvious hot seat people, but I look at last year and some of the things that happened and think, well, I mean, I have no idea. Brian Harsin obviously is another obvious one, but you look at last year and you think, well, how could this have happened? How could these jobs have opened? And in Mullen's case, it was he's fired after some really successful seasons, but they were looking forward trajectory wise. They didn't feel good. And then you also had Oklahoma's coach leave and Notre Dame's coach leave. Like,
yes, last year was once in like a century type stuff. Like it had literally been almost 100 years since a Notre Dame coach left for another college job. It had been 80 something years since an Oklahoma coach left for another college job. But that's what happened when USC opened up and when LSU opened up, and obviously Florida opens up. Almost all of the biggest jobs opened up in 1 year, and that created a trickle down effect. And I don't think that's going to happen this year. Nebraska could open, Auburn could open, guys could go to the NFL, undoubtedly. But last year was tied for the biggest we'd ever had or something like that in terms of number of changes. I don't think it's going to be as big, but there are always a couple of surprises that you just don't see coming.
Well, and so I'm curious if you think what happened with Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly is an outlier, or is that potentially not a new normal, because that's never going to be normal, but the idea of a destination job, has that changed?
Yes.
Are there, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could look even 5 years ago, Brian Kelly would talk about how he didn't think he was going to be at Notre Dame much longer, just because coaches don't stay at Notre Dame that long. I don't know if it's Mike Leach or whoever said it, but it's like after 10 years, like your approval rating can only go down. Like you wear out your welcome at some point.
Steve
So Brian
Spurrier
Kelly
said
was
that all the time.
Yeah, it's just it happens. So you're not going to see guys staying at these jobs as long as you used to, in part because just the wear and tear of the job. People need fresh starts. People may want to go to the NFL. You look at Brian Kelly going to LSU was unique for a lot of reasons, but like I just said, Brian Kelly on his way out, not the biggest surprise. Lincoln Riley going Oklahoma to USC. At the time, that was going to be a Pac-12 job, and the path to the college football playoff seemed quite easy. That has since changed with the coming Big Ten move. But it's LA. Ari's not here to talk about it, but he said it plenty of times why USC is a bit of an appealing job to somebody. We've seen the pictures of Lincoln Riley's mansion. So, but in general, no, I don't think we're going to see guys at jobs for 15 years like we used to. Shoot, I mean, like 2/3 of college coaches have been there for like less than 5 years. That's just the nature of the business now.
Yeah, that's what's amazing to me. And like, Ferentz staying as long as he has. Kirk Ferentz was hired a few days after Bob Stoops got hired at Oklahoma. I mean, that feels like another lifetime.
Yeah, it really. I mean, Bob Stoops has since come back twice to the XFL, retired, put out a tequila line, done all kinds of stuff. But Kirk Ferentz is still there, doing the same thing at Iowa that he did in 1999, and it's good for him. I mean, we're not hearing Kirk Ferentz to the NFL anymore.
No,
but he's still getting He's still getting big contract extensions out of it anyway. So good for him on that, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing about this is now we've got these huge guaranteed contracts. Like at your alma mater, Mel Tucker's not going anywhere. He's just not. Oh, you think if he's good, could he go to the NFL? That maybe.
I think he could go to the NFL at some point. I think it's very unlikely he leaves for another college job. His contract at Michigan State is I think the exact same parameters that Brian Kelly got at LSU. 10 years, $95 million. So like he could have gone to LSU. He didn't. But I think he knows what he can build at Michigan State. I do think the NFL is probably somewhere he wants to go. And he got that massive contract, massive guaranteed contract. The buyout didn't change. It is very easy for him to leave still if he wants to leave. I don't think it's coming anytime soon necessarily, but I don't think he's going to be there for the duration of that contract. Just like I don't think any of these coaches who sign 10-year deals are going to be there for the duration of their contracts.
Do you think it's tilted more now toward the coach leaving of their own volition? Because like when I said he's not going anywhere, my mind was immediately was thinking they can't fire him. And you were
Yes.
thinking, oh, but he can leave. And it's funny because I've got to retrain my brain to think that way.
Yes. Some of the, not all the contracts are the same. Like Jeff Traylor got a 10-year deal at UTSA, but his buyout is very big for a couple of years. So I don't think it'd be difficult for him to go somewhere right away. But Mel Tucker's buyout didn't change. James Franklin's, he'll be there for a few years before it becomes cost advantage to get out. But yeah, you got to think about the buyout. There's two different buyouts. There's the buyout to fire the coach, and there's the buyout to leave. Sometimes they're the same. Sometimes they're very different. Sometimes they're very big, and you don't think it's going to change. That's why nobody thought Mario Cristobal was going to go to Miami, because it was like, I don't remember the exact number, like $5 or $7 million just to get him out of the Oregon contract.
Right.
But Miami put together all the money and did it. That's why there's multiple numbers to kind of think about when you think about a coach's future.
Well, and that's like the Florida State situation. They paid Willie Taggart's buyout to get him out of Oregon. They paid Willie Taggart's buyout to fire him. They had to pay Mike Norvell's buyout to get him out of Memphis. And all of those expenditures may be keeping Mike Norvell safe.
They're still paying Willie Taggart.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Mike Norvell has not done, I think, what they would hope. But my guess is he gets a longer leash just because they can't really afford to do anything different because of what the situation they got themselves into.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's more than $10 million.
It is.
If they want to fire him.
Yeah.
So and Florida State is not a school with a ton of money to be able to do that. They're not in the SEC. They don't have SEC money. They are doing a bunch of facilities upgrades at the moment, which are much needed, but they really, really, really don't want to fire him if they don't have to. So they're very much hoping Florida State gets to a bowl game this year.
Yeah, they're hoping it works, and it's. I do think that's probably a better situation to be in than say Auburn, where there are people in the power structure actively working against you as the coach. Like
yes,
Nebraska.
Speaking of money to buy out a coach, the money that Gus Malzahn got at Auburn to fire him was ridiculous. He got half of that up front. I don't know, a total more than $10 million.
$20.5 million. He got a total $20.5 million when they're done paying him.
And they gave Brian Harsin the exact same buyout clause, the exact same percentage. 30 days, you get half of it, and it's 80% guaranteed or something like that. They gave him the exact same. They didn't learn anything from it, which was baffling.
It reminds me of one of my favorite Simpsons lines at the end. Homer says, "I haven't learned a thing." It is amazing though, and how frustrating would that be if you're an Auburn fan to start this season? Because they've got one of the toughest schedules in America. Now they do start with 5 straight home games. Penn State's one of those, but I mean, how hard would it be to get up for this season, given everything that's happened?
It's tough. I'm curious. There hasn't. I wondered if when Brian Harsin survived that, if there would be a massive fan rallying around him like they did Tommy Tuberville. That kind of didn't happen, and I think recruiting is probably a reason for that. But if they start off pretty well, if they beat Penn State, it'd be tough. But if they beat Penn State, you could see things swing back, I think, in a big way, because just like any fan base does, if you win a bunch of games at the beginning, then they're all in on you. So that's why the start of the season is so important for Brian Harsin. And if you lose that Penn State game, you worry if things could kind of spiral.
I think they do I think the rank and file Auburn fan likes Brian Harsin, likes the way he responded to all this. I don't think they love the way he recruits, but they are probably looking for reasons to root for him. And I think you're right. I think that's the thing. You've got to win those games. Otherwise, they'll just bail, because college football fans will defend almost anybody to the ends of the earth if they're winning. And then the second you're not winning anymore, all of a sudden, all the little imperfections come out. It's college football season, which means you need Sling TV, where you can watch unbeatable college football coverage starting at $35 a month. Get everything you love about college football, rivalries, marching bands, bowl games, conference power rankings, all of it with Sling. Plus, Sling has all the big games on all the big channels like ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, SEC Network, ACC Network, Fox, and the Big Ten Network, all for the best price. And the best part is getting Sling is easy. It's easy to set up, even easier to use. You can stream on any device and record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space. Plus, you won't get locked into a long-term contract. So if you're looking for the perfect place to spend your Saturdays, you need to take a look at Sling, where you can get everything you love about college football for the best price. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the live TV you love at the price you'll love. Try it today. Get ready to compete with me and Ari and all the friends from the Andy Staples Show and friends, because you're going to get a chance this year to show us that you are better than us at picking games against the spread. And I realize if you listen to the show, you're saying, Andy, historically, you've not been very good at this, but trust me, I have been practicing. I'm going to be amazing at it. We're doing this through runyourpool.com. This is the coolest partnership because Run Your Pool is going to let us run a pool with you guys. So you go to play.runyourpool.com/staples. That's play.runyourpool.com/staples. You can pick games against us, against the spread. And also, you're going to see how much you like runyourpool.com. And you're probably going to be making pools with all your friends in all the other sports as well, because there's not just college football. They got the NFL where you can do picking against the spread. You can do survivor pools. You can do all kinds of different stuff. MLB, NBA, golf, you name it. So join our pool. And there are some prizes. There's some Fanatics gift cards for the winner. And oh, by the way, Ari has promised that the winner is going to get a segment on the show. And I guess I have to go along with that. And so pick well, choose wisely. It's play.runyourpool.com/staples. Play.runyourpool.com/staples. So
yes,
this is going to be a wild season. I am just fascinated by this, Chris, because I feel like we know less about the teams going into this season than we've ever known about teams.
I agree. I think the transfer part has made a huge factor in that. We've got the Backyard Brawl next Thursday. I can't wait. And we've got quarterbacking both teams, former USC quarterbacks. You've got JT Daniels, coached by Graham Harrell at West Virginia, against Keaton Slovis at Pitt. I don't know how any of those people are going to look. It's a completely new system that they both have new offensive coordinators. So like, I don't really know what it's going to be. The 131 rankings came out today, and 1, 2, and 3 is fine, but you could make a case for a dozen teams to be number 4. The difficult part about doing a top 10 is you have to include 10 teams. And yes. and we really don't know. And like, I put out these rankings. I'm not like hard defending any of this stuff because I know it's going to change, and I'm excited for it to change. Sometimes I hope I'm wrong because I don't want it to be as predictable as maybe it could be. And that's why the college football playoff is at this point should not be the be all end all for fans. If you're an Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia fan, Clemson fan, yes. But there is so much more going on this season. The Pac-12 is wide open. The ACC could be wide open. The Big 12 is wide open. The Group of 5 spot is wide open now with Cincinnati coming back down. So like, I'm really excited about the season, and I have no idea what to expect. And that's an awesome feeling.
Yeah, the results we get for that first month, I think there will be some mind-blowing things that then when we look back in November, we're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have been so surprised about that. But the part, I can't even figure out where it's going to come from. Like, I have an idea of who might be kind of undervalued. Like, it feels like Minnesota might be a little undervalued this year. I think NC State, people understand that this is a very good team coming back, that Devin Leary is a great quarterback, but there's not that many trendy, this team's definitely going to be on the rise this year.
Well, Kansas State is a popular sleeper, but I don't know if they're a sleeper anymore after Stuart Mandel picked them to win the Big 12 and go 10-2.
Okay, let's talk about that, because Stuart Mandel's Big 12 predictions were wild. Now, The K-State one, yes. I've done, I work for SiriusXM and work on some of the conference channels quite a bit. So I've done a lot of Big 12 radio this summer. I understand exactly why K-State is the sleeper pick. I agree with all of that stuff. Personally, I think Oklahoma is going to win the league. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to put up huge numbers in Jeff Levy's offense. I think defensively, they're going to look different than what you're used to because they got a guy who has a very different philosophy in Brent Venables than Alex Grinch had. So that said, Stewart had Texas going 2-7 in conference play. He had Kansas going 3-6 in conference play. I got to know what 3 wins those are.
I mean, I assume one of them is Texas.
It's Texas, yes.
They got to go to Lawrence this year. We saw Oklahoma barely made it out of Lawrence alive a year ago, right? So look, credit to Stu for taking a risk and being out there. I do the 131. I have Oklahoma in the top 10, but I got Northern Illinois fans mad at me that I put him in the 70s or something like that. So that's nothing compared to what Stu was getting yesterday for. Well, you didn't mention it, but he had Oklahoma going 7-5.
He did. That was the other big piece of that.
That was the one that set everybody off. And look, Stu has been consistent. He didn't have Oklahoma in his way too early top 25.
Right.
I think he put him at 25, maybe at the end, the most recent one. But like, he's been consistent with not thinking Oklahoma's going to be good this year. I disagree. You disagree. But at least credit to Stu for being consistent on that and standing behind it. But yes, it was kind of wild to see the total standings there. TCU at the bottom, Kansas above Texas.
I'm trying to game the Texas thing out. Like, if that actually happened, what happens with Arch? Would Sark keep his job? Like, how would that all shake out? I don't know what Texas is going to be. I don't think they're going to be that bad. But I'm not entirely sure they're going to be good either. So that part of it is really interesting because Arch feels like the best kind of insurance, but then he could also at some point be like, this is really weird. And Georgia still wants me and they seem pretty consistent.
Yeah, you and I already talked about a lot. Like how bad does it have to be for Sark to keep his job? People I've talked to think he's pretty safe for that reason. Look, Bijan got hurt last year. That impacted where things were. They tried to address the offensive line issue by bringing in a ton of recruits on that line. So, like, they have attempted to make the fixes. They've got really talented wide receivers. We just got to see, can Quinn Ewers be the guy, and can they tackle? That's what it's going to come down to.
Can they block is my big question.
Yes. They got, like I said, they may start 2 freshmen on the line, I think, potentially, but they got some 5-star offensive linemen in there that they're going to be leaning on potentially. So there are questions, but 6-6, 7-5 seems more than doable, I think. And that would obviously be enough.
I think so too. And I said 6-6 would be fine. Not good, not what you want. When I was on a podcast with my guy Anwar Richardson from Orange Bloods, and the Texas fans that were watching live went berserk. Like, how dare you suggest we might go 6-6? I'm like, listen, if Arch is coming and you got good young offensive linemen who could develop into very good players over the next few years, like, that's fine. Trajectory wise, that's fine. It's not that bad. But
you got to remember what Texas has been for the last decade.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, they're like middle of the pack in the Big 12. Like, in general, like, it's not like we always joke about Texas being back or whatever, but like they've been an average program for a long time now. And it's not unreasonable to think that 6-6 coming off of a 5-7 season is realistic. So,
well, it is going to be amazing. Those games, we are less than a week out from week 1 games. Those start Thursday. We got week 0 games, Chris, and our partners at BetMGM have put out the lines for these games. I don't know that there's any that just jumps off the page, but let's talk about Northwestern and Nebraska first. Nebraska's a 13.5-point favorite. I do feel bad for the people making lines early in the season this year for the same reason we just talked about. Nobody knows anything. Chris, you've covered enough Big Ten football to know that Pat Fitzgerald doesn't usually have 2 bad years in a row.
No.
So the fact that Nebraska is almost a 2-touchdown favorite here kind of scares me a little bit.
Look, like we've said it a million times, Nebraska went 3-9 and they outscored their opponents. That was because they destroyed Northwestern last year. So that's a part of it as well. And your point about not having 2 bad years for Northwestern. Here are their records since 2018: 9-5 division champs, 3-9, 7-2 division champs, 3-9. So it's like Big Ten championship or you're 3-9 over the last 4 years. And I'm not picking them to win the
West,
Big Ten West by any means, but they're probably going to be better because he usually fixes things. So I'm on Northwestern here to cover. And like if it's straight up, if Northwestern wins, then like we said at the beginning, then Nebraska fans throw it into a panic. But that's a lot of points.
Yes, that's a ton of points.
And with Nebraska, I'll believe it when I see it. And I know we saw it against Northwestern. I know, but I got faith in Northwestern covering, I think, at this point.
So one more that jumped out to me. Vanderbilt, a 7.5-point favorite at Hawaii. I've been watching videos of the Vandy players enjoying Hawaii. And this is one of those things that, like, my lizard brain can't help but go here when I'm watching this. Because, like, if it were my kid on the Vandy football team and they had a game at Hawaii in week 0, I would want them to go out early and enjoy Hawaii too. I would want that to be part of the experience. I can just imagine, though, if they lose this game, what people are going to say. I can't believe you guys were out in the field when you could have been practicing. I don't think that's how Vandy fans sound.
No, probably not.
But
look, it does help that it's week 0, that you can get out there early and not only enjoy yourself, but also the body clocks, the time difference. It's not like you're going to Hawaii at the end of the year, like we've seen with some teams, and they stumble. But this is tough. Hawaii, they went to 2 straight bowls the last 2 years, but they fired Todd Graham, and all of their good players left before Todd Graham got fired. That's part of the reason he got fired. It was a mess. Timmy Chang, new head coach, comes in, and
Hawaii legend.
Hawaii legend. You guys, we all probably remember watching him, staying up late in the early 2000s. Set the NCAA passing records back then. He's the head coach now. And there's a lot of excitement and everything around him and him being there, but the team has to completely rebuild. They lost everybody. So it's like that mix of new head coach, not sure what to expect, versus Vanderbilt, who lost to an FCS team last year, going 6-hour time difference. Like I have no idea what to expect out of this game. I think I'm leaning Hawaii at this point just because of the fundamentals. The East, the SEC team traveling out to the islands week 0. I lean Hawaii, but it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, the 7.5-point spread helps you lean Hawaii pretty hard.
Yes,
that's a pretty big spread. I feel like for this game. So that's and again,
actually, yeah. And one other thing about Hawaii, actually. This game is on CBS Sports Network. Enjoy it, because this is the only Hawaii game that is on national television this year.
Wow.
Stuart Mandel actually pointed this out to me a couple days ago, and I looked into it. All of their home games, Hawaii home games, all of the rest of their home games are on Spectrum Sports pay-per-view, which is the only way you can watch it on the islands. You got to do pay-per-view. I think it's $300 for the year. And sometimes other networks will pick up the games to do them on the mainland. It happened a number of times last year. San Diego State, Fresno State, San Jose State. But the home schedule this year sucks.
Right. So, it's a function of which Mountain West teams have to go out there.
Yes. So Fox Fox CBS did not pick up any of the Hawaii games other than the Vanderbilt game. So the only way to watch Hawaii home games this year, if you're on the mainland, is going to be via the Team One Sports app, which you can get on your phone. It's on Roku and Apple TV, but people told me you can only watch Hawaii games on your phone. So if you're a real if you're a real late night college football fan, a real degenerate who's betting on
I was going to say,
Hawaii
you
game,
could say degenerate gambler. It's okay on this
yes,
show.
and you got to watch the Hawaii game late and you want to bet on it, you're going to probably have to watch it on your phone. So just be prepared for that and look up for the Team One sports app. It's a one with a one. It's free, so you don't have to pay anything, but it's you're going to have to go out of your way. And only the real college football sickos, I think, are going to be watching most Hawaii games this year.
This is valuable information from Chris Vannini for a very specific segment of our audience, and I know that they appreciate it. Chris, it's all starting. I will not be with you and Ari in person on Saturday, but I will be with you in spirit and maybe on Zoom. Thank you so much.
Yep, we're here. The games are here.
Hallelujah! We'll be right back with Mitch Sherman, our Nebraska beat writer. He's in Dublin, but he hasn't had a Guinness yet. I'm about to hit the road again. Gotten in good shape this summer. Trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to stay in shape? I know how I'm going to stay in shape. With Peloton, with Kirsten Ferguson, with Selena Samuela, with Andy Spear, with Adrian Williams, all my friends. Well, I don't actually know them, but these are world-class trainers who are in my ears all the time, telling me to push harder, telling me what I need to do, and making sure I get the best workout possible. And even when I'm on the road, I'll be able to do it because having that Peloton app turns any hotel gym into a world-class workout facility. I'm so excited. I want you to know about this too, because Peloton is not just treadmills and bikes. It's a community where you learn to keep pushing because there are other people there doing the same things you are, going through the same stuff you are, going through the same life things you are, and they're still getting it done every single day with the help of those Peloton trainers. So if you want to get a bike or a tread, go to onepeloton.com, check out special offers for first-time members. If you want to just have a fitness program that fits seamlessly into your life, sign up for the Peloton app. I've been doing it since 2020, and it has helped me transform my body, and I'm going to make sure I stay in shape thanks to Peloton. So a care package came in the mail not long ago with a Rhoback hat, a Rhoback polo, and a Rhoback hoodie. The hat has been my hat of the summer. The polo is fantastic. It's breathable, it's comfortable, and it's fun. The hoodie, unbelievable. So comfortable. And of course, within about 2 days, my wife stole it. So Rhoback, I might need just one more hoodie. But Rhoback is going to be a big part of this college football season because they're leading the NIL charge. They've signed up Alabama linebacker Will Anderson, who if you listen to this podcast, we think he's the best player in the country. Texas running back Bijan Robinson, who if you listen to this podcast, we have a little bet involving another NIL deal of his, and Notre Dame tight end Michael Mayer. They're becoming the go-to activewear for college athletes. Their performance polos, hands down, the best polos out there. The performance hoodies, like I said, so comfortable. Your significant other will probably steal it, so just buy 2 right now. And finally, Rhoback is making their first ever intro to bottoms with everyday shorts. They're perfect for a day of activity or a night on the town. So use the code Andy on Rhoback.com for 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com and 20% off all polos, Q-zips, hoodies, and shorts with the code Andy. Rhoback.com, and the code is Andy. Welcome back to the Andy Staples Show presented by Sling. And now it's time for what to watch for. We all know what that is. Nebraska, Northwestern from Dublin. And for the second time in the history of this show, we're going international. The first time, Chris Camrani was just surfing in Mexico. We couldn't even get video of him because the internet was so bad. Internet much better in Ireland. Mitch Sherman, our Nebraska beat writer, joins us. Mitch, how many times have you vomited this practice?
I saw some of practice today for Nebraska outside of Aviva Stadium. There is a practice field, saw Northwestern practice, come out of practice, and then was granted the opportunity by Nebraska to watch a few minutes of practice, and I can report that there were no vomits. So
wow,
that's a step in the right direction. We are now 1 week removed from Scott Frost mentioning on the radio that Nebraska players, offensive linemen, vomit 15 to 20 times per practice in an attempt to compliment them. He later walked back this statement saying it was an exaggeration, and he was simply trying to praise the offensive linemen for the hard work that they were
I assumed
that
that he
they
was.
were putting in.
I assumed that he was joking at the time, Mitch, because it seemed the number seemed a little outrageous. But it was funny because even in like 1989, like saying that in training camp would not have been a good thing. Even at our most barbaric times in terms of training, doing that would be a compliment in February, but not in August, if that makes sense.
I think, well, right, because they should be in better shape than that. Not to mention, it's a unhealthy way to do anything. I had a hard time even processing what he was trying to say when it all came out on Thursday night last week. I think that Scott Frost is so secure in his feelings about the job that the Nebraska, and I say this in all seriousness, the job that the Nebraska medical staff and the training staff does, that it didn't cross his mind that this might come across as something that could be unhealthy for his players.
Right.
They are not vomiting 15 to 20 times per practice. I think it was more than just a little exaggeration. So best for Nebraska that everyone move on, which we are not doing here.
Well, that's the thing. All anybody's been able to do is talk. And you have this situation where everybody knows the clock is ticking, the buyout drops in October. The athletic director has made clear. There's a quote in your story in The Athletic on Thursday from Trev Alberts that you used before, but basically him saying the empirical data says this usually doesn't work. Yep. Like that, but and that's the thing. All they've been able to do is talk about this. So I give everybody involved somewhat of a pass because we're just nitpicking every single thing that gets said. What happens on the field in Dublin will be the first bit of real data toward, is this going to work long-term or not?
Right. And I went back and dug up that old comment from November, and then Alberts actually said it again in an interview. I don't know that I would have gone back necessarily and written about that today here, 48 hours before the opener, if he hadn't doubled down on that comment. But he did in July when I sat in his office with him. And it was a similar comment to what he made in November, right as Alberts decided to retain Frost or announced the decision to retain Frost for the 2022 season. And like you said, Andy, it was an admission that this thing doesn't usually work. And in saying that, Trev laid out the reasons why he believes it can for Scott Frost, but that's not backed by evidence. It's only backed by emotion and his desire for Frost to get this done. You can say one thing about Trev Alberts when it comes to Scott Frost. That's a truly a positive, and that this is an athletic director who is rooting for his coach. We've seen instances in the past at Nebraska where the athletic director was not necessarily rooting for his coach, including notably the past two times that Nebraska has fired a coach with deep roots to this program, Bo Pelini and Frank Solich. Both of them worked for athletic directors who most definitely were not rooting for them at the end of their tenures, if in fact they were rooting for them at all, in Steve Peterson and Sean Eichhorst. So we're dealing with something different with Trev Alberts, and I think that matters, not just to Frost, but I think it matters to the players and the assistant coaches, and it impacts the way that Nebraska can enter this season on Saturday in Dublin against Northwestern. There is pressure, unquestionably, more pressure than I think what you'll find on a run-of-the-mill Power 5 football team, but it's not the same kind of feeling around the program that Solich experienced in his last year in 2003 and that Pelini did in 2014 before he was fired.
Well, and that's good because that at least means there's no excuse. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. And if it doesn't work, then everybody tried. You can say everybody tried. Nobody was trying to nuke them. And many changes have been made. You went through in your story in The Athletic some examples of where this has happened, and sometimes it's worked. Like, it's interesting because very recently in the Big Ten, we have seen it work. We saw it work with Jim Harbaugh, where he made a lot of staff changes coming off a terrible season, got his pay cut in half, got his buyout cut, and wound up winning the Big Ten. We saw it work with Brian Kelly after 2016 at Notre Dame, where I've never seen a program change so much without firing the head coach. They wound up becoming much better. But to your point, it's much more common to see something like Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech last year, like Les Miles at LSU in 2016, where the coach survives. The AD's like, yeah, we're going to give you another shot. And then it still doesn't work.
Most alarming for Frost is the comparison that I found that actually matches up the best in terms of the record and the performance by the coach in the years before this do or die season occurred is Tyrone Willingham at Washington.
Oh, yeah.
3 losing seasons, including a 4-9 season in 2008. It's 7 or 8. I believe it's 2008. And then 0-12 the next year. The bottom fell out. He lost the team. And now I don't expect that to happen in Nebraska. But the Willingham Frost comparison, it's more relevant than I think anyone who follows the Nebraska program would like to admit.
So there were a bunch of changes, and I'm fascinated by what we're going to see on the field, because Adrian Martinez has gone to Kansas State. We liquefied some steak in his honor on Wednesday's show. It was glorious. But
right, because that's how he consumed food after the broken jaw. Good.
How he derived his nourishment. That's exactly right. And so Casey Thompson takes over. Casey Thompson last seen at Texas. Mark Whipple, the new offensive coordinator, last seen helping Pittsburgh win an ACC title last year with a first-round quarterback in Kenny Pickett. I'm laughing because we started this with an example of a head coach and me not knowing whether he was kidding or not. Same thing with Pat Narduzzi and Mark Whipple. Pat Narduzzi ripping Mark Whipple on the radio. I'm using air quotes when I say ripping. He threw too much, but he threw you to an ACC title with a first-round quarterback. So again, not sure if he's kidding, how much he's kidding or not, but I am really curious what this offense is going to look like, because this was Scott Frost's offense. Even though he had offensive coordinators, this was his offense that he had developed at Oregon, brought to UCF, brought to Nebraska. What Mark Whipple does or has done in the past at Pitt and at UMass has been different. What's this going to look like on the field?
I think it's going to look quite a bit like what Pitt did last year. There will be some Frost influence. Absolutely. He's going to have an impact on the offense, but he's looking forward. And he said this today, Thursday in Dublin. The last opportunity for Frost to make public comments about how this opener is going to go, what his role is going to be in the offensive execution Saturday. And he said he's looking forward to being able to spend time with the special teams, to be able to walk around and get involved in the defense if that's something that he needs to do. His defensive coordinator, Eric Chenander, coaches from above, from the booth. So Frost can help there. Now, there are, of course, defensive assistants down on the field, but Whipple's going to be there. He's going to be with the quarterbacks on the sidelines, calling the plays, designing the structure of this offense. Frost, of course, is going to have final say on big decisions like every head coach does, but it's no longer the Oregon turned UCF turned Nebraska system that really has just not taken hold in Lincoln for Nebraska the way everyone envisioned it would when Frost took this job in December of 2017. There have been too many turnovers, too much inefficiency, difficulty scoring in the red zone. It just hasn't mixed with the Big Ten. And here's an opportunity for Nebraska to reset, to go to Whipple, let him do his thing. And, the season largely rides on that. The offense has to improve. It's got to be better. It needs to be more efficient at doing the little things that win football games in the Big Ten. Because I think the defense, despite losing a lot of star power after last season, is going to hold up its own and give Nebraska a chance to win games.
Well, and that's the thing. the offense gets better. Maybe the special teams gets better. As we talked about when you were on the show in May, they now have a dedicated special teams coach. They did not before. Special teams were a big problem for them the past few years. Last year, especially Michigan State, Iowa, the gaffes kind of piled up on them. How much does Scott Frost being able to kind of act globally help with that?
I think it makes a difference when the head coach pays attention. And Scott Frost, admittedly, has let his assistant coaches handle the special teams over the previous 4 seasons, and not only let it go to the assistant coaches, but also he has not assigned that role to one coach. It's been an outside linebackers coach, or another outside linebackers coach, or it's been an analyst in the 1 year, 2019, that got Nebraska into trouble with the NCAA for too many coaches on the field. Amazing still to think that Nebraska got slapped with probation and Scott Frost faces a 5-day suspension at some point this season. That's a day, 5 days. So it will occur likely during a bye week. Amazing that came as a result of the coaching that was being done with the special teams units, which were the worst in the Big Ten, one of the worst in all of Power 5 and all of the FBS. So it's changed. And now Bill Busch is here, and he's a proven assistant coach. He's done it at Nebraska. He's done it at LSU and other places. And he is all over the details. Bill Busch is paying attention to every little thing that has to do with the Nebraska special teams, and his job starts and ends with the kicking game and the coverage units and all the things that make a special teams unit strong. So I do think they're going to be improved, but I think Frost's influence on it will be somewhat minimal. He will be more involved because he has time to do that without running the offense. But Bill Busch is the driving force behind what has happened on special teams for Nebraska in this offseason.
So they are playing the one Big Ten team they beat last year, and they pounded Northwestern last year. I have a hard time believing that Pat Fitzgerald could have a bad defense 2 years in a row. If he's got a body of work, it's that they tend to fix the issues that they have. So how nervous is Nebraska about this could look like a completely different team than the one they shredded last year?
I think Nebraska knows that it will, because of the history of the Nebraska Northwestern series. That game last year was an outlier. It was an anomaly, not in the way that Nebraska played. Nebraska came out and it played one of its best games of the year. It's hard to say entirely because of the competition, and Nebraska played Ohio State close and played Michigan close. So, I think that is more impressive than beating Northwestern, a 3-win Northwestern team, by 7 touchdowns. But still, it was a clean game, and the Huskers didn't do the things that they did in just about every other game to beat themselves. That Northwestern team in another week could have taken Nebraska down to the wire, I think. And it did some other teams, despite having what was a bad season for Pat Fitzgerald. So that's not going to happen again. Nebraska and Northwestern play close games. They played overtime games. They play dramatic nail biters just about every year that they've met since Nebraska joined the Big Ten. So that's the kind of game I would expect. And I would expect that, yes, Northwestern is going to be better on defense. And with Cam Porter as a running back, he was injured for the game in Lincoln last year. It's going to be a run game that has a little bite. And that's the weakness, the number one weakness I would expect for Nebraska on the defensive side. And really, it could be the number one weakness for the entire team. We'll see about the offensive line. But Nebraska's ability to stop the run, because it could be a little bit soft in the middle, the front middle part of that defensive line. There's not the kind of depth and experience that Chinander wants there. So if Northwestern can come out and run the ball, shorten this game, take some of the athletes on the edge away from Nebraska by dictating the style, then hey, it's going into the fourth quarter. And I feel like that's where we're headed. I think Nebraska has the better team, has the better athletes, but and I feel like Nebraska's in a better place as a program than it was a year ago as it went into that Illinois game, because there just hasn't been the same kind of drama and off the field storylines this season that we saw a year ago. And that's a credit to Scott Frost and Trev Alberts. And the captains and the new assistant coaches, they've done a nice job. The vomit mishap aside, of getting this team in a good place to open the season. So I don't see anything like what happened at Illinois last year, but Northwestern's a team that can take Nebraska well into the second half.
All right, Mitch. So there's this game. They come back home. They get North Dakota, not North Dakota State, but North Dakota. Georgia Southern, obviously Oklahoma, then comes to Memorial Stadium. And then Indiana comes to Memorial Stadium on October 1st. And then, like magic, the buyout drops. What do they need to be at the end of that stretch for Scott Frost to feel comfortable going into the end of the season?
4-1. I think, it includes a win over Indiana on buyout reduction day, and a win against another Power 5 opponent in Northwestern or Oklahoma. Now, anybody can say which one of those two games is the most winnable, Northwestern or Oklahoma. I don't see a scenario where Nebraska loses Saturday in Dublin to Northwestern and then bounces back 3 weeks later to beat the Sooners. It could happen. They get games at home. That game was close a year ago, like all of them were in Norman. Casey Thompson scored a bundle of points against the Sooners last year.
His dad's alma mater, yeah.
Right, it's a huge game for the Thompson family. There are a lot of storylines around that the week that OU comes to town, and not to mention the storylines about the rivalry renewed. And this is the first game in Lincoln since Nebraska left the Big 12 between these two teams. So yeah, they've got to be 4-1. So they have to find a way to win this one on Saturday. That's the only path to being 4-1 on October 1st.
All right, Mitch. I think the question on everybody's mind, at least those of us who have not been lucky enough to travel to Ireland for work or pleasure, does the Guinness taste different over there?
I will report to you after tonight. I have been, Andy, in Dublin for now about 30 hours. And sleep has been it's been hard to come by, as it was on the trip to Ireland. And hey, I've been working. So one night here, the pub was not the place that I found myself, but I've got two more before the game on Saturday, and I can promise that I will get out and try some Guinness. I can tell you this: Dublin has far exceeded my expectations, and I came in expecting it to be a great town, but this is my first time in Ireland, first time in Europe. I'm loving Dublin. It is a really, really has great energy. It's like a little bit of New Orleans, a little bit of Washington, D.C. It's got some college town feel to it. So it's great. I would encourage people, whether they're going to watch an American college football game or not, to check out Dublin. And they're actually kind of excited about this game. It's not being whisked under the rug because it's a couple of 3-9 teams from last year. I think the novelty of having a college football game here in this soccer stadium is enticing, interesting to the Irish people. So good for them, and I hope a bunch of them come out and just look to watch a good football game. I know there'll be about 10 to 12,000 Nebraska fans in town by Saturday, and Northwestern is probably going to bring a couple thousand. So this game needs some Irish people, and I've even heard that the football fans in England are known to make the trip over.
Come on over
to check out a sporting event in Dublin or two. So looking forward to Saturday. Can't wait to see football again.
I cannot wait. Mitch, as we record this, it is midday here in the States. It's happy hour in Dublin. Go to the pub. Have fun. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. I will take that and run with it.
The show was brought to you by Sling TV, the TV you love for a price you'll love. Check out sling.com for special offers.